opened it up as well, so you had the two stores.
Yeah. So in 2001, we opened up a second store in Sherwood Park, and our parent company wanted our young retailer in there, and so there was a suggestion that for Steve to run it. So he came back and he ran it, and did a wonderful job, but lost a ton of money in the first year. And
How could you just stand on the sidelines and watch this?
well, you know what? It's a funny thing. I wasn't happy. You never want to lose money. No entrepreneur ever wants to lose money. I mean, that's just cardinal sin. But you also, it was one of the best things that could ever happen to him. And why I say that is because he learned how to make money at lower volumes. He learned how to turn a business around. If he would have opened up and made money from day one, if there was any bit of hardship or any bit of hard time, he would have never made money in the future years. So losing money at the beginning teaches you how to make money at a lower volume rates. And all of a sudden now he had to learn how to make money at less volume than he wanted. And then he did. He turned it around, and all of a sudden the volume went up a little bit. And what happened? Well, all of a sudden you start making some money, and so you start being profitable.
Yeah, it wasn't just the two of you running. You guys were an entrepreneurial family, and something that I've always admired, looking in from the sidelines, is communication is number one. Tell me more about how, like, what you instilled in the kids and in the family, because when communication goes, everything breaks down. So how did you do that? Because you guys talk about the tough stuff.
Yeah, you know what? I mean, being a close family and all living in proximity and working together, I mean, can be tough. And we tried to set up the kids for success the best we could. And one, again, Ashley was deeply involved in the business also, and so was Nancy, and so was I, and Steve. And so how do you make that all work? How do you make that all sort of fit together? Well, the first thing you do is it's kind of like a husband and wife. You have to give people different roles and responsibilities, and you have to communicate so that everybody understands what their roles are and what their responsibilities, so that it doesn't feel like one person is, it's the old thing. I mean, somebody's trimming turnips in the back room and the other person's going golfing every afternoon.
Right.
You know what? When you have that, all of a sudden the partnership fails. And then we formed a family company that, basically gave us an equal share into the family company. And that really worked out well because everybody had to contribute to it. And if you didn't contribute to it, you didn't get reimbursed for it, or you didn't get remunerated for it. And I think that was one of the better things that we did, because we felt that we were fair to everybody. If you didn't want to work, well, you're not getting paid. And so I think, unlucky, again, our kids were very conscious of that. And both of them were such hard workers. I mean, they instilled the values that we wanted into the business, and they kept those values going, and their own, and put their own stamp on it, which I think is the real cool thing. And I mean, all of a sudden, it'd be Steve comes and he says, well, I think we're going to run the business like this, and we're going to do that. And I'm like, no, that's not what we've done for the last 20 years. The old man wants to say that.
Right. But was it hard letting go?
But you have to let go a little bit, because you realize that, I mean, there's new ways to do things that can be better. And that's one thing that I've never felt that the need is to be the captain of the ship forever. I never wanted to be. I was for many, many years, but I wanted the kids to captain the ship.
And you stepped away and let Stephen run the company.
Yeah, I did. And between him and Ashley, they looked after. They looked after the business, and it was good, because we had two stores at one point, and one was in one store, one was the other, and then they started. Ash and Steve really had a good rapport, so they could work. That we could put them back into the same store, and but we had to give everybody roles and responsibilities. Somebody had to be the ultimate boss, and Steve wanted that role, and Ashley wanted a secondary role because she was raising a family, having kids, and starting to raise kids and have a family. So she wanted to.
But I'm going to circle back to the question about communication, because that's what I've had so much respect for the way you guys deal with issues, because it's when issues come, that's when families can really break down, and then communication just stops. A lot of families think no, communication is communication. So what did you instill in the kids and the family to make sure that when problems arise, you get in a room and you talk about it?
That's a tough question, because I don't know if nobody wants to have the hard conversation. Nobody enjoys that. Nobody likes that. But all of us have never been afraid of that. It was always had to laugh, because it would be somebody needs to be let go at work. And, Steve and Ash would get together. Well, we got to let go of George, and Ash would say, I'll just send him in my office. I'll have the hard conversation with him this time, and they flip a coin and they say, I'll do that, or I'll do it. And nobody kind of shied away from a tough conversation. And I think that's, and that's with anybody. And, whether it was with a family or whether it was an employee or a coworker or family member or whatever it was you always had to, and I think the other thing is we always put family first, business second. And I said, I will never run this business if our family falls apart. I'll make changes one way or another if the family falls apart because of a business, because I've seen it happen too many times where businesses fail, and families fail because, the family can't get along and can't work together. And not everybody can work together. I mean, that's just the way it is. So you have to find a way to do it. And if you can't, then maybe you're just going to be family members and you're not going to be co-workers also. So doing both of them at the same time is tough.
Did you have some golden rules, though, about putting family first, about being home at a certain time, or anything that you can pass on to other entrepreneurs that are growing their business, that are just working, constant and not including the family?
Yeah. You know what? I think that's the one constant we always had was I always worked 6 days a week, but I never worked on Sundays.
Okay.
Unless I had to, unless there was somebody, there was a reason to go in. But Sunday was kind of the day, family day.
Okay.
And, so I mean, if it was a Monday and it went till 9 o'clock at night, well, no big deal. Who cares? And Saturday was always a work day. And I just think it was kind of weird because it just felt like you always had to work Saturday. But Sundays was the day off. And I think that was one of the rules that Nancy had, and she always had, okay, we're going to have Sunday dinner, we're going to get together, and we're going to make a meal for the kids, even if they weren't living with us or whatever, but you're coming on over. And I think, and then you try not to talk about business, but you end up talking about business. But I think it was in a different light. And so I think that was always, there was a parameter of a certain amount of time that you have to take off. And I think the other thing is being successful as an entrepreneur is the biggest number one thing is surrounding yourself with good people. You know what? We always surrounded ourselves. If I had one talent, because I really don't have a lot of talents.
Oh, you're so
but I think if I had one talent is that we always tried to surround ourselves with really good people, because surrounding yourself with good people makes your life easier and makes you way more successful. And as soon as you do that, and the second part of that is remunerating those people, and not just by financial, but by looking after maybe their family, or helping them out, or they need time off, or telling them they're doing a great job, and taking them out for a round of golf. I mean, whatever it may be, and then having them part of the success of your business. I'm a real advocate that when you're an entrepreneur, is that the people that you work with are your key to success. If you have great people and look after them, you're going to be successful. if you treat them like just regular employees, you're probably not going to be nearly as successful.
That is such great perspective. Something else I want to ask before I leave to the business and quickly move into another area is, in your life, like when you sold Strathcona and then you eventually sold the grocery stores to move on to our company now, the Luxus Group, you always sold at the height. And people stood by and went, "What are you doing, Dawn? You're making top dollar and you're selling. Why? What is that business perspective and the takeaways there?"
I mean, little luck, little talent, little timing. I mean, whatever you want to call it. I think I tried to take emotion out of things. And even though those are some of the most emotional things that you are. And I have to admit that Nancy is better than me in most cases with it. I get a little bit more emotional with stuff than she does. We sold a few homes in our day. I mean, we bought and sold, and then she'd be like, "I think we should sell." And I'm like, "What do you mean sell? I love that place. I love doing it. I don't want to do it." She goes, "No, because I think, you know what? I think it's gone up 20%. We can sell it, buy this, move on." And I'm like, "I don't want to sell it," But she had a real knack for that. And with the business end of it, I always felt that you had to take a lot of the emotion out of it. When you do, all of a sudden, when it becomes a real business decision, then it's different. The hardest thing in my life was selling out in 2011. That was the hardest. Because there was a lot of emotion. When you're in that grocery business for that many years, and you are, that's all I knew. Since 1974, that's it, man. To 2012 or 11, 12, that's all I knew. And so you have all this emotion that is, it's over. Like, it's kind of done. But I also knew it was time. And I knew that the writing on the wall was that the parent company, Sobeys, was moving in a different direction than what we were. They want to control the profitability and the business, where we couldn't do it. And I just think if I have one knack, I guess maybe is that I feel like I saw that. I could see that in the future, that if we didn't do it now, we were this asset and everything we built up over the last 25 years would be gone tomorrow. And again, as entrepreneurs, and most of us, we're very small in the big scheme of things. Even though we had at one point 450 employees, we're still fairly small on the big scope of things when you compare it to, Walmart or Costco or Safeway, and you're dealing with multi-billion-dollar companies that they deal on the stock market. And so, for us, it's we had to look at it as, are we going to protect our future? And that was our key, is when we left, is we wanted to protect us, so that, that we didn't look back one day and say, boy, that what we woulda, shoulda, coulda, right?
And as you moved, I appreciate that discussion, because I too, so often we let our careers define who we are. And I felt that when I left CTV, and so many people, after they leave their career, after spending so many years at it, they're like, well, now what? What do I do? But you had, this large skill set, and something I've heard you always say over and over and over is, you got to have a place to hang your hat.
Yes.
So although it was, I don't even know if it's fair to use the word semi-retirement-ish, because we were starting our new company, you're heavily involved, and you still like to have that place to hang your hat. Why? Why is that important?
You know what? I think everybody needs a place to hang their hat, and not necessarily, it doesn't have to be a business. You can retire and hang your hat in different ways. You can volunteer at a number of different places. There's enough organizations there to sort of be involved. But you need to have purpose. You need to have purpose when you get up in the morning. You have to, and this is my only belief, is that I think that I always feel like I was very lucky, because I was involved in another business once we left the grocery business, so the transition was fairly easy. I had an office already. I didn't have an Apple box, and I had to take it, put in the garage, and say, well, what am I doing tomorrow morning? I was very lucky because I had a spot to go park myself, and I think that's no matter what age you retire at, but just being involved in some stuff makes you younger, keeps your attention, keeps you keeps you going. And again, I mean, very seldom you'll catch me here on a Thursday afternoon or Friday afternoon watching TV, right?
Never.
I mean, that's not sort of me, but it could fit for other people, and that's okay. But I think we all need some sort of purpose is what we do.
And so along the way, I want to hold space for this because you've had this constant group of friends. I mean, you just celebrated, you had a golf tournament with, 20, 30 friends, and you just wrapped it up after 30 years. 30 years you guys would go every single spring and go out in this tournament. Sometimes it was fall, whenever it was. But friends were always a huge part of your and Nancy's journey. And to this day, you still have those same friends. Why is that such a core value? And does that date back to your mom and dad or Nancy's mom and dad?
I as I mentioned earlier, my parents had lots of lifelong friends. And so did we. I mean, when we first got married, we were very lucky. We've had friends that we're still associated with today. But we started this golf trip, and I think one of the things what happened with our industry, and especially in the grocery industry, is that all of a sudden the grocery business was turned into a little bit of a brotherhood. We were very close, and we got to know a lot of people around the province. I think I knew almost every guy at one point in almost every IGA or Sobe store.
That's so cool.
And we had an association, and we had a golf tournament, and we had conference trips, and so you become with who you know, and I mean, and you have lots in common. And so we started this golf trip, and it was over 30 years ago, and we had a lot of fun. We'd travel around Western Canada and Western BC, play golf, have a few drinks, tell stories. But we had a lot to relate to, and everybody was in the same boat. I mean, we were living the highs and the lows of all being entrepreneurs. We had the same values. We had a lot of the same problems, so we could kind of all associate together. Anyways, it just felt it was, there's always a time and a place for everything, and it was a time to finish it. So we had a little finishing off at Kananaskis, and
brought the wives. We got to come, but it was almost like an ad hoc EO group, like an entrepreneurs organization in its own right, because you said you leaned on each other, you shared business stories, and you need that network to get through tough times, good times, and I when I look on it now or look and think about it, that's how I would describe it. Like, you need your people.
I think you're right, and I think that a lot of people. We had a lot of people in the province. I mean, again, we're all great retailers and great families, and the history behind it. I mean, somebody should be writing a book on it, because it really was quite the journey of all the different families that got involved. And there was the Bateman family, and the Tashik family, and the Loveson family, and the Protzak family, and Petasky family, and I mean, there was all these different families that ran all these stores across the province. And we were a close group of people. We were very lucky because we got to travel together. We traveled around the world a lot of times because there was conference trips, and so we would go, and that was our only holiday. So we would travel together, and of course, what do young people do when they travel like that? They have fun. And
that's right.
And you sit around the pool and tell stories and exchange stories. And we were really lucky that we had that opportunity, because it just doesn't happen today.
No, and that network is important.
Exactly, and you don't realize how good that network is until you don't have it. And I know that a lot of other franchise groups, nobody has what we had, 30 years ago. I mean, it was not even close to what we had.
Before I wrap up with you and Nancy celebrating 40 years, something I want to shine a light on. You're going to laugh, but I want to talk about this because it's a bigger picture to me because I didn't grow up with it, is happy hour. And it's not so much about the alcohol. I mean, a nice drink from time to time. But so many people ask me about that because we do that now, Stephen and I and lots of our friends. To me, as an observer of it initially, it seems like that time of the day to reconnect. Am I reading that right?
You know, you're 100% right. Some dear friends of ours, Mike and Tracy Bateman, as you know, Tracy had her grandmother and grandfather. They would sit down every day at 4:00 and have 2 gin and tonics. And he just passed away this past year. But they lived to, I think, 94 or 95, and she's 92 or something like that. I never had the opportunity to meet them, but everything I hear is wonderful people. But that's where they connected. Not that we got the idea from them, but I'm just saying the longevity of it. And that's one of the things that, again, what we try to do is, not every day, but a lot of days, is there should be a time of the day where you can just sit down and talk and digest and visit. We all have hectic, busy lives. Well, not me as much, but as you and everybody else. But
you're going full tilt lately.
But I think there's a great opportunity, and I think that was one of the reasons Nancy and my marriage, or our marriage, has been so strong, is because we have that bond of, we kind of are interested in, we're not only, husband and wife, but we're friends, and we're, we spend time, and we actually can visit. And, and as you get older and you're with your partner more, you better have some interest together, or it's you don't want to look across the table and not have anything to say, for a week straight. But that's not the case. And I think that was part of the whole happy hour thing, was that you could sit down at 5 or 6 o'clock at night and before dinner visit for a little bit, and we always tried to have a family dinner. When the kids were young, that was very important to us. I mean, we tried to, I wasn't always home, and I was working, and so it was tough, but when we could, we always tried. That was our thing, and that's why I said earlier, Sundays was important, because it was a family day, and it was a time, and then in the evenings to be able to sit down for an hour and just kind of how's your day, and I think that's an important thing
reconnect.
For marriages.
So 40 years you just celebrated with Nancy, against all odds, really, because you were so young and, baby, but what made it work when you look back on it now? And because I watch from a distance, like I said, I don't think there's any other marriage I admire more than your and Nancy's marriage, because you're friends, like you have fun. You can tell, like you really enjoy each other's company. And sometimes I will watch during happy hour and you've been together all day, but you'll sit down and it's like the first time you saw each other in a week, and you're just having a great old time. It's beautiful. It really is.
Well, thanks. Obviously, we shared problems like every other couple, through our life, and there's no way that I'd say, oh wow, that was easy 40 years. Like everybody, you have to work at it, and I think the one thing that Nancy and I always strived on is that we had a very we knew how to compromise. We always had respect for each other, and we knew how to compromise. I think that was one of our things, is that, somebody would say, well, you know what, I think we should take, kids shouldn't go here or shouldn't do that. And not like the other person to be, you know what, I think it should be like that. I always right. And sometimes you're going to be right. Sometimes you're going to be wrong. Sometimes you're right and you're still going to be wrong. But it has to happen on both sides. It can't be one person compromised and the other person doesn't. I think that respect and compromise will take you a long way with a marriage. And liking the person that you're with, not just loving them, but liking them, and enjoying things together and spending time together. And again, it doesn't have to be every hobby. Everybody has the same thing, or the exact same interest. You can have your own things in life, and you should, right? But I think it's the important thing is to be able to, you know, be with somebody and, you know, being with Nancy's easy because she's really a nice person.
Oh, she's
Well, she's a lot nicer than me,
inside.
you know, as you know. But
John,
but no, really, she is.
is.
And you know what I mean. And you know, she's a wonderful mother and wonderful grandmother. And you know what, I've been very lucky to say that's 40 years, and we keep talking. Well, we're going to try and make it to 50, and then 60, and 70, and see what happens. But you never know. I mean, you know what? I think you got to live the best life you can today, and then worry about tomorrow, because you know what? Something could happen to one of us, and it's going to happen to one of us at some point. But I think the big thing is that's why you want to make the most of your life. And I think we have. I think we've done a pretty good job of living. And again, we a lot of the stuff that other people were doing 40 years ago, we couldn't do. And so maybe today we're doing some of that stuff that we wanted to do 40 years ago.
Yeah.
And, you know, we get to travel a little bit more, and we get to have a little more independence, and we get to have, you know, some of those things, but we didn't have that 40 years ago.
You didn't.
So life evens out,
It really does.
you know, and it's a long haul,
so.
and it's a marathon, and it's not a sprint.
And now you have 4 munchkins that call you Gammy and Guido that need you as well.
And yeah, you know what? They're the highlight of our life. You know what? They couldn't be better grandkids, and they couldn't be, you know, they mean the world to us. Yeah.
Well, and you to them, because it's like you're the highlight of their lives too, and I can say that on their behalf. I could go on for hours. There's so many stories, and we've squeezed a lot into this conversation, so I think there's going to have to be a part 2 and at some point. But I want you to know how blessed I feel that I have you and Nancy in my life, to be able to call you mom and dad-in-law, to lean on, to have love me and my children, and to be a part of this family. And the biggest thing, I have so much respect and admiration for both of you, is that the one thing I will say is you lead by example. In everything you do, you have set such a beautiful example for us. And I think that example started with your mom and dad years ago, as we talked about. And Nancy's going to have to tell her story at one point.
Well, and I mean, you know, Nancy and I have always said that we don't have 2 kids. We actually have 4 kids. Yourself and Brian, you know, are and we never even talked about Brian. That's
I know. How did Brian get left out of this conversation? Sorry, Brian. That's for part 2.
That's for part 2.
He'll laugh at that.
But the
Ashley's husband, everybody,
yeah,
in case
Ashley's
you're piecing it
But,
together.
I mean, we always look at it that we have 4 kids, not just 2. And we couldn't have been prouder of our kids for choosing such wonderful partners, and know that we love you guys to tears.
Well, the love is mutual, and the respect goes into the stratosphere for both you and Nancy, as does the love. And I just want to tell you what a gift this was, to be able to sit here and share these stories with the audience, because we've all watched and learned, and you have a huge network out there of people who would say the same things about both you and Nancy, and others that still. So you're Stephen Petasky's part of that family. Yes.
Yeah,
and I say
I'm
that
Steve's
with so
older
much
brother.
yeah, all the time. And Nancy is Ashley's older sister, or my sister often I get called. Dawn, an honor, a pleasure. Thank you so much for stepping into the inner circle, for the vulnerability, and more importantly, the lessons that you have learned along the way. There are takeaways for all of us in the journey. And I will say this, as we celebrate Christmas miracles in the holiday season, Merry Christmas. Thank you for the gift of your story today.
Well, thank you. Thanks for having me. And let's look forward to Christmas.
I'm in.